Now, WCW closed in 2001. What was the reaction like backstage? And were you looking at possibly going to WWE before you joined TNA?
No, I mean back then there was Howard Finkel and Lillian Garcia. Really, that was there wasn't even wouldn't have even been a thought of bringing anybody else in. That was their crew. It's funny Lillian is still doing it. They brought her back,
Hmm.
um, but uh, but yeah. So it man, it was it was an appreciation for the ride I got to live, and a lot of confusion as to where I was going to move on from there. Not only in wrestling business but in life, and that's what Volume Two talks a lot about the way I kept myself, even if it was gig to gig and paycheck to paycheck, and how I kept myself alive in the business before the TNA opportunity came out, to be able to remain a player. And a lot of that I give direct gratitude and appreciation to Jimmy Hart, who included me in everything he did. Not only as a ring announcer, but as if Jimmy Hart was doing a project, we were working on it together. It was 50-50 collaboration. That's how much trust Jimmy Hart had in me. And I think about 6 months ago, I called him and I told him the book was coming out, and I thanked him. And he said, "Well, that just makes me smart." I said, "What does that mean?" He said, "Well, because you're smart. You're great at what you do. You're a hell of a ring announcer, if not the best. So if I'm working with you, having you on all my projects, and that makes me smarter because I have you." And I was like, "Wow, coming from me hard. That's like quite the compliment." But man, yeah, we had some good times together, going up and down the roads, Memphis and Atlanta, and just different places. And like I said, anything that Jimmy was involved with, is David Penzer was involved with. And without, I say there's a lot of people in my career that, help, take me to the next journey. If Jody got me to WCW, Jimmy got me to the XWF, and then through that craziness afterwards until Jeff Jarrett got me to TNA.
Yeah, I mean, it's always good to have people in your corner, root for you, help you out, and TNA at this particular time really was on fire. Like they were doing some real next level stuff. You had Christian Cage, there. You had Kurt Angle. You had AJ Styles and Samoa Joe. All these guys, bringing things to a whole new gear. Talk to me about, you'd mentioned Jarrett signing you. Talk to me about your time in TNA.
Well, that was actually, I had a very successful company. I was a business partner, and it was the Airbrush Tattoo Company. We were in over 100 theme parks, zoos, and aquariums in North America, and we're on almost 50 cruise ships at one point. Um, it was successful until it crashed in '08. But so I didn't. It was an interesting dichotomy because I was taking JB's place, who was taking uh, uh, temporarily taking Shane Douglas's place. Shane Douglas was doing the backstage interviews, the Mean Gene stuff, and so Jeff told me, this is just for 1 or 2 weeks until once Shane comes back, JB's our guy, and I know that he for the when they first started and they had the money situation, I know he worked many weeks, if not months, for free, so he deserved to have that loyalty, and so lucky for me, JB was incredible doing the backstage interviews. So there's no, if they had me doing the ring announcing, familiar voice, knew how to, again, working with Keith Mitchell, the same executive producer, knows how, nobody has to micromanage me. I know what I'm doing. Not, I don't say that cocky. I just say that is because I do. I did by that point. And, and so then they could have JB, who was kicking ass on backstage interviews. It just, so from what started as like 1 or 2 gigs, became 4 or 5 years, and then a couple trips back. But it was interesting because it was the first time in my career that I didn't need the wrestling business to make a living. It was a nice extra money and nice fun times drinking every night after the shows with Don West, rest his peace, and Mike
Mhm.
Tenay. and the whoever else would join us at the bar there at the DoubleTree. But I was having a ball doing that, and I was making nice extra money, and uh, Jeff would allow me to work from Universal during the day so I could run my company, and it was good times. It was good times.
Yeah, I mean,
Every other week, we tape Monday and Tuesday. I
okay.
believe so. 4 shows every other week, and don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was. And so yeah, and it's interesting because, and I talk about this in volume two. It's the first time in my life that wrestling was not something that I needed. It was something that I wanted. Not that I didn't want it before, but WCW was all about how long could I keep this going, make a living for my family. I had 2 young kids. Then the XWF came, and I actually got my first XWF paycheck when I got my last severance check from WCW. I couldn't even do 1 week with combined, but I'm not complaining about that. And then it's like, okay, how do you Jimmy Hart and string together some stuff, and then Jeff hired me to do the World Wrestling All Stars, and I had my own in your face booking company, booking guys like Snuka and King Kong Bundy and stuff, and getting a percentage of that. So it's just stringing along, and then at some point I had to realize that I had to find something else to do, at least for a living. So we started this company. It was very successful. So it wasn't like I went back to TNA and said, I need this to work. Like, Jeff Jarrett needed it to work. You know what I mean? AJ Styles needed it to work. I wasn't emotionally invested in it. I had a blast. I gave it my all. I know no other way than to give it my all. But it wasn't an emotional investment at that point. It was just how long could I keep, you know, keep coming to Orlando, doing my deal, and then go out and drink at the DoubleTree with Mike and Don every night. So and when I was let go uh, the first time, they the only thing that sucked about it is I had just bought my wife a new car. Uh, but it did, the extra money was nice, but it didn't affect, I didn't have to worry about, okay, where's my next paycheck coming from? It's, okay, maybe I could find another way in the wrestling business now that I'm back in, in the wrestling world, so to speak, to find some extra money. And it's not, no, don't get me wrong, it's not all about money. It's just, but you can't do it unless you could pay your bills, you
Right.
know, you know, you know, you can't, it wasn't about the money. It was about how I could survive and still be a part of the business that I loved and was honored to be a part of. That was, unforeseen in so many levels. And so, unfortunately, when you have a wife and 2 young kids, you have to find a way to pay the bills, or
Exactly.
else, or else the wife tells you, "Hey, no wrestling, no more wrestling. Go do something because we have bills to pay." So, so that was sort of always the kind of crazy walk that I had to walk. And but yeah, but it's been a blast. I've finished up with Impact Wrestling before they became TNA again, about a year and 3 months ago, about 15 months ago. I knew that for a while that I was going to be passing the torch to Jade Alexander, Jen Alexander, Jade Chung, who's no longer there. I don't know what that. I'm assuming that has to do with Josh maybe going somewhere else. Um, but uh, but Scott Moore gave me a great send off, man. Uh, I tell it's just couldn't have hoped for anything more. If I never do anything else in this business, um, if that's the icing. If that was the end, that was the perfect ending. I'll always be ingratiated Scott Moore, who I had known for 30 years. I started booking him as an enhancement in WCW. So the tables kind of turned a little bit. At first, he worked under me, and then I worked under him, and that's cool. Scott's a
Yeah.
smart guy, very successful.